Did he just eat cheese with like hot sauce on it? And so season 1, there's an episode where Blitz just does, like he just eats cheese with hot sauce. And we put that as much in the show as we can. Like we try little things like that, like we'll try to put into the show because it's so funny.
Did he ever notice it?
Oh yeah, no, he knows all about it now.
Why am I all of a sudden the bad guy?
Monster, I think he's had enough. Nah, he's got a few more hits in him.
Welcome to Lightweights Podcast. My name's Joe. Today's guest, we have the creator of HAZBIN Hotel and HELLUVA boss, VIVIENNE Medrano.
Every so often we do what's called like money shots. There's like these really cute Easter eggs. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so you know what's fun about Stella?
Vivienne's online persona is also known as viziepop.
I'm getting by avoiding his questions. So complicated, I hate when it's complicated. Why do I always end up in situations that are complicated?
She's an animator, a director, a producer, a writer. She really does it all. Her YouTube channel just hit 10 million subscribers and has over 1.3 billion views.
Maggie, we rehearsed this. We're doing trust exercises.
We talk all about the behind the scenes of her show, upcoming secrets of what's to be revealed.
My dream is to cross them over, so...
How she meets the cast, how the show is written, everything.
And Richard's been one of the best people I've ever worked with, ever. He's the voice director for both shows and voices Moxie.
So if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and let me know if you want anybody else from the cast of HAZBIN Hotel. I also have a podcast with Brandon Rogers, star of HELLUVA Boss. I'm going to link that down below if you want to go check it out. And I might have somebody from HELLUVA Boss and HAZBIN Hotel coming up very soon. So stick around. Please enjoy VIVIENNE Medrano. What's it like being in your brain in this world? Are you just constantly absorbing different ideas and seeing how you can apply it to an animated character, a show, anything that you're doing visually?
I mean, I love that you said that because I do, like, I absorb a lot. Like, I feel like everything in my shows comes from, you know, weird experiences, people I've met, things I like, and just music I consume and like the kinds of genres I listen to. And that's why musical theater is something I love so much, because it's not really one genre, but there is like kind of a sound and kind of a vibe that I really like, in like the storytelling of the lyrics and everything. But, you know, I like country music. I like polka, and like Weird Al is like one of my favorite artists. And I love you know, like pop and like kind of doo-woppy stuff, like Meghan Trainor and like and Casey Musgraves. And my music taste is so varied, and I feel like that's why my characters get so like they're all over the place, because I find something to like in all of them and kind of what genre they represent and the kinds of people too, because I feel like I've also known so many people in my life of all kinds. And growing up in high school, I never really belonged to like one group. I wasn't really in one clique. I was like kind of in the art kids, kind of in the theater kids, kind of in the like goths, kind of like, but all those groups had like groups. And so I kind of just ended up in like the weird kids. And, but I kind of floated because I had friends and like everyone. So I feel like that's an element that's come into my work, because it's just kind of so all over the place and my characters are so all over the place. So yeah, I like the absorb allegory, because I have like, it's just put everything kind of into it.
So when you are inspired, do you immediately know where you're going to put that idea, or do you kind of make a note and then apply it later on when you're figuring out what to do with it?
Kind of a mix. It depends, because if I'm like really inspired, something I can like act on it right away. Like sometimes I'll get like a spark of an idea and it'll go into like the next script that we write for either HELLUVA or HAZBIN, depending on like which show I'm kind of thinking about. Because it's interesting, like they're both like two sides of like my creative brain. And so whenever there's something that's like really emotional or character related, or like I'm thinking about like the romance of like the things in HELLUVA Boss and like those characters and their like relationships, it's very different from thinking about the kind of grander themes and like story arcs and like twists and turns of HAZBIN. So it's like whenever I'm really into like thinking about these bigger themes and this bigger story, I think about HAZBIN. And then when I'm more like wanting to think about these intimate, more nuanced, more like just interpersonal things, I think about HELLUVA. And so when there's something different that comes, like a new inspirational point, I have to usually note it down, because I'm like, that doesn't fit into either of these shows, but I want to explore it. So maybe that'll be in like another show or like another project or, you know, something. So I try to like keep things like you said, like written down or like in my head so that I can come back to them later. But some things are just so explosively like, oh, I just had the best idea for like this, you know, this season and whatever. And that it's usually we're almost always writing something. So we're either writing HAZBIN or we're writing HELLUVA. So it'll go into whichever one is happening, I guess.
Are you stockpiling it for the seasons later on, or are you pretty focused on just what's ahead?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love to stockpile because both shows, I know exactly what I want for them moving forward. And so with HELLUVA, it's fully planned out. And for HAZBIN, it's obviously there's more room for, you know, obviously depending on like how long it goes and what happens. But I know exactly where I want the story to end. So it's more just like, yeah, like stockpiling ideas of like, oh, if we got this much, this is what would happen in this season. And if you know what I mean, like kind of planning it out that way so that, you know, when and if that happens, like we can really like hit the ground run. Like I'm like, oh, I know then like this episode's going to exist in this season, in this episode. But yeah, both shows are kind of like planned out, which is exciting because then it makes it easier to like have fun on the journey. Cause I'm like, oh, I know which points need to exist, but how to get there always changes and is always like something we kind of come up with in the writing room, which is fun.
Real quick, I'm sure you guys have noticed me really improving on my health. Part of that is me drinking AG1 every single morning. AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that delivers daily nutrients and gut health support. And it's backed by multiple research studies, so you can trust what you're putting in your body. It really keeps myself in check every morning to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. AG1 is constantly putting the formula to the test, trusted by experts and medical professionals, and it's backed by multiple research studies. I'm always looking for ways to energize myself throughout the day, and coffee gives me a crash, plus sometimes it keeps me from going to sleep. After drinking AG1, my body really fell into place. 97% of people in a research study felt more energy after 30 days of drinking AG1. Plus, 91% of participants noticed that they need less coffee after 60 days of drinking AG1. I've been taking it every day for almost 2 years, and I love the product so much, which is why I'm so excited to be partnered with them on this podcast. If I had to recommend anything to support whole body health, it's AG1. So if you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1 today. Try AG1 and get a free welcome kit with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/lightweights. And for the 4th of July weekend, get a limited edition AG1 hat with your first subscription. Only while supplies last. If you want to support this podcast and if you want to take care of your body, go check out AG1. How far in advance is the writing room done? Do you ever...
So far in advance.
It's never reactive to what the audience says?
No, which is something I love to have out there for like prosperity, is that I feel like because, especially HELLUVA Boss, because we release HELLUVA Boss so sporadically, like the show is... I think it's going to be a total of, I can't math at the moment, but the first season was 8 episodes. Second season is 12. And we started the show like, oh my gosh, back in like 2019, I think is when episodes started like properly releasing. And it's already 2024 and we're only just now at the end of this year going to be releasing all of season 2. So it's like such a long journey, and we've, you know, there's been so long of like waits. So I totally understand people probably thinking like, oh, they're making the episode from scratch or something. But no, like we wrote and recorded this season that's only releasing now back in like, oh my God, like 3 years ago. So there is some part of me that sometimes wants to go back and be like, okay, like I'm a better writer now. So like, I feel like there's certain things, but I also want to kind of stand by it and go, well, everything we wrote forward, because we've also already written the first half of season 3. And we've already recorded it too. So like everything happens so far in advance because we're only just releasing season, you know? So it's usually at least a year or 2 in advance. This one was a little different because we just took so long on this season, but yeah, we write it super in advance and we have the story planned out. So we're really like knowing which parts like this certain arc has to go to, like how many episodes, like to kind of get through that, what major character moments happen. And I love it because I like having a roadmap, but we always like adjust. We go through so much in the writing process. Like we go over those scripts so heavily now. And I love the writing team that we have for season 3 because it's the most people we've ever had. Like it went from me and Brandon in season 1 to me, Brandon, and Adam in season 2. And now in season 3, it's me, Adam, Brandon, Sky, and Lyle. And so there's so many more people, and I think it's only made it stronger because everyone is able to contribute a perspective, and it just makes the scripts, I think, way more tight to have more feedback, you know, because feedback's always good, and more perspectives. So yeah, I love it. And yeah, long answer to a simple question that yes, we rate them very far in advance. But sometimes I'm like, because you see the reaction and you go, that's happening later. Like, you know, like sometimes I'll see someone go, well, that better happen in the next episode. And I go, it's not happening in the next episode, but it is happening. It is happening. I promise.
Do comments like that ever make you want to tweak the script to give it more toward what the audience wants than what you originally had?
Yeah, well, your heart wants to do that. Like your human, like, insecure brain goes, oh no, like let's tweak it to like do that. But what I've had to learn is that like what we do from a production standpoint is that we kind of need to lock the episodes. We don't, like, I know some shows go back and rewrite things for those reasons, but it really messes up the whole pipeline to do that. Like, to go back and rewrite means we have to re-record. It means we have to reanimate and refix. And it's so much work and so much money that it's like I've kind of learned, nope, let's just let it be what it is and we'll fix it. Like, if there's an inconsistency or something that we create, we kind of fix that, like, going forward. And it's hard though, because yeah, you want to be like, or I have to resist the urge to like kind of say things like, hey guys, like yes, like this character's gonna do this thing, but like not yet, like can you just wait? And I think that's why like the release is always kind of tricky, because it's like I know they're waiting so far in advance. So that's why I'm excited for this year, because we have the episodes coming out more monthly, so it's a lot less of a wait. And I think like when everyone sees where the season ends, they're gonna go, oh, like if you rewatch the season, it's like, oh, I see the arc that was intended through the whole process. Because we wrote them all at once, but then the release was like one episode this month, and then 3 months later another episode, and then 3 months later another one. And so I get people being like, you know, but yeah, that's the process. That's what it's been.
When you have Helluva Boss season 2, you release episode 1, it's completely done. Where is the process of all the other episodes? Where's episode 12? Have you started the animations on that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I guess another thing, too, is that animation just is a very time-consuming process. Like, I'm learning the differences between it and live action, because I love live action, so cool to me. But I've learned that, like, live action is usually a shorter time actually making it, and then everything else, like the post and like all these other processes and like writing and all these other stages, but the actual like creation, like the acting and the set and like, you know, the actual filming is so like such a short part of it. For animation, it's like the opposite. It's like probably like, I mean, writing still takes a bit, but it's not that long. It's like a couple months to do a season, and then but it's staggered with, like, it's overlapped with like recording and with boarding, because storyboards are the first stage and they usually take a couple months, and then animation takes a couple months, and cleanup takes a couple months, and just everything takes a couple months every episode. And so the only way animation really gets done in a timely manner is everything being staggered and everything kind of this really really intricate pipeline of like when boards start, like when a board artist finishes this episode, they move to the next episode, it goes off to animation starts that, and then the second they're done, they move to the next episode while cleanup starts. You know, it's like this ladder of you know, but it still takes like one episode to completion will sometimes take like up to 3 months.
Those people are the same ones doing from episode 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to the end?
Yeah, usually it's like the same team. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's animation's such a like cool process, but it is very intricate and it's very time consuming, and it's not something you can just rush. And I think people don't realize that, because, you know, even like waiting a year between seasons, it's like it probably took them more than a year to make that. You know, it's just all staggered. But you know, we try to get things to people as soon as possible, but I also do think that there's a merit to just a big long wait and then more content like that you can actually watch together, or weekly or monthly, because then the story is more cohesive and there's less of this like Like, it feels like Helluva kind of became an event every time we release an episode, which also I think puts more pressure on each individual episode. It's like, if it's not like, it's like almost like the Pixar problem. It's like they only release an episode or the movie every so often, and each one's a banger. But then the second there's like a movie that's like not a banger, people are like, oh, Pixar fell off. They aren't doing very good anymore. And I'm like, it kind of felt like that for a little bit with Helluva. It's like, we were like clenching. We were like, oh my gosh, is this one good too? Like, but that was early on. That was like something that now we're not as worried about. We know we have so much faith in the show. I love the show to death. I know that people care about the show and that's all that matters, and it's not healthy to be like, oh my God, is this like, we have to keep topping ourselves. Because then it's like, you're just going to hurt yourself doing that.
Real quick, guys, today I'm very excited to share something that's going to take your pleasure game to the next level. It's from our friends at Hustler Hollywood, your premier lifestyle and wellness brand for those seeking pleasure and more. You can find them online at hustlerhollywood.com and in 59 store locations nationwide. And fun fact, Hustler is celebrating its 50th year as a company this July. I'm very excited to announce you can get Hustler Hollywood's exclusive Melrose Pro online or in store. This toy features 9 thrusting rotational modes and 9 vibration patterns, an LED display, and a super powerful motor. Plus, it's super easy to clean and it's USB rechargeable. Just 2 hours of charging gives you an hour of playtime. So right now, if you use my code JOE20, you can get 20% off any item online. Again, that's code JOE20. Whether you're a single, you're a couple, maybe I don't know. Try something new, try something fun. You can discover more amazing products like this at Hustler Hollywood or visit hustlerhollywood.com. So treat yourself to the best in pleasure since 1998. See you there. At what point do you realize an episode is done and ready to start getting animated?
Honestly, it has to happen in the script phase. So we when we feel really good about a script, it's like when we can read it through and kind of like visualize it and really feel like every line was like thought about and everything was like thought through. And that's why I love this bigger writing room, because I feel like
the team of the 5 of you?
Yes, the 5. It's just so nice to have, like, again, so many perspectives, so that like when everyone signs off on it, it's like, yeah, we all feel good about this. And then if there is ever any insecurity, it's like easily dispelled, because it's like one person's like, well, maybe this could have been, and everyone's else like, dude, we went over it like 800 times. Like, we're good, but we can always be like, it's always good to take in the feedback, but like, it's also really important to trust in what we were making, because, we made it for a reason. Right. And we can always like learn, like the feedback per season is kind of nice, because we kind of see what stuff is noticed. Like, oh, did you notice this subtle animation, like acting on the character that wasn't in the script, but it was more like an acting thing? And people notice those things, and I go, oh, maybe we should include more of that in the script so that we can be more specific and be more like, like very, like really, really honing in on things, or like certain ways that we bring the music in. Just like, I love like getting that kind of feedback, because it helps us craft like a better episode.
I think what's so cool about you is that you have so many different hats in the entire process, which makes it so hard to figure out what to talk to you about, because there's so much I want to talk to you about. But do you have a favorite part of the entire process, whether it's story writing, the animating it itself, sharing it to the world, reading the feedback, working on the next episode already?
I love so much of it. I mean, I fell into directing because I started as an animator. Like, I went to school for animation. I worked freelance as an animator, and I animated on the original HAZBIN pilot and a little bit on the Helluva pilot. But I kind of stopped animating by the major productions of both shows, because I fell into writing and directing. And I fell in love with writing. I really love it. And I really love directing, because I get to see these artists that, in my opinion, are more talented than me, really elevate my vision and elevate what, my characters, and like bring them to life in like ways that like I geek out over. So like, I'm almost like a fan of like my team. Like, I really love seeing what they do. Like, it's incredible. And shout out to like my studio, because everyone at the studio is like killing it. And I love everything you guys do. You guys, like, again, like, are what makes the show like what it is. Like, it's incredible. But yeah, I think my favorite stage is, I can't pick one. I really care about the writing stage just because it is the foundation that everything else is relying on. I also really like the storyboard stage because it's similarly like the building blocks of the visual.
Is it the same as what I imagine a room with a bunch of on a string and paper clips?
That's like the old school way of doing it back in like the Disney days, like which was the coolest thing ever. Nowadays it's very online. It's very like we'll give the script, the board team will like take it, start to do a visual. What I have found I really love doing, because I think it cuts a little bit of work and brain power from the storyboard artist, is I will edit what's called a radio play, which is that I'm also in all the voice records, which I love being. That's also a stage I really like, because it's the shortest stage. It's the stage that happens the shortest of everything, which is kind of crazy. The actual recording of the actors is like the shortest stage, hands down. I actually get sad how fast we get through it, because I'm like, and it happens so early in advance that I'm like almost dreading every time we come back, because I'm like, oh no, we're getting closer to like the end, right? And
is that why you get so excited to see these people at these cons?
Yes,
it's like
exactly. It's like getting to see them, like, because I don't see them past like when we're in the record session, and sometimes we haven't done it in person. Like this season, for season 3, has been kind of the first time we've really been in person recording, which is
Helluva.
Yeah, of Helluva.
What do you mean in person?
Like even just because like everything else was like during COVID, so it was like this season was like the first one we were like in the like recording studio with the actors, at least in LA, and then me and Richard would go to New York every so often to do the New York people, and that's also really fun. So it's really special, and that's why I'm like I dread going back for more in a way, because I'm like, oh no, we're this much closer. But it's also like such a fun stage, but because that is happening, what I'll do, so we'll record the actors, and then I will take their takes and I will pick the ones that I want, and I will basically put them on a timeline.
What does that look like for you? Are you just in a room with headphones, just playing it back over and over?
Literally just, in my room on my on my personal computer. I get all the files. They'll send me, I circle a lot of them, because the actors just do so much fun stuff. So we'll get like one that's kind of like the safe one, and then we'll get so many different variations on that. And then sometimes we usually have a take that's just wild, like, or it's kind of improv-y.
Where you just know.
Yeah, and those are the ones that I'm like, I really hope that we have time for this one, because like, I have to be mindful of like the time frame of the episode, but like usually, we go with the weirder, like the craziest read. But yeah, so then I'll take all the files, like we'll get Bryce and Brandon and Vivien and Richard and everybody and Erica in there. And so then I'll listen to all their takes, pick the ones I want, and then lay them on the timeline based on the script. Like I have the script open, so I'm like, okay, this is Luna's line.
Oh, you're building the actual.
Yeah, I'm building it. And then it'll, like, when I'm done, you can, like, listen to it, like, and you'll kind of hear the episode. It'll be like...
It's like a table read.
Exactly, yes. It's like a table read. And I'll use that to kind of guesstimate the length of the episode. And, like, I'll guesstimate, like, oh, there's a fight scene here. So I'm like, how long-ish would the fight scene maybe go? Maybe a minute, maybe 2. And so I space that out. And I'm like, this is all the room we have for this fight scene. And then... and then the story continues after that fight scene, and like, so you can hear the audio. And so once I have that track made,
what's that on?
I usually just use like Premiere, because I'm very basic, and it's an editing program I understand easily. So I'm just like, yep, here, do. It gets tricky when I then have to like give it to other people, like the sound people and stuff. But yeah, I'll build that, and then I export the whole thing, and then we divide it, or I divide it into sequences, and that's what we give. We give that like audio file to the board artist, and then they have like all the performances they need, and they use that. And I think it's helpful for them, because it's, like I said, less guesswork, because when you read a script, you might not like know how the actor's going to read that line, but to have it, they're like, oh, I know exactly what it sounds like, so I can draw exactly the expression and the emotion of this line read, because that's what it's going to be. Yeah, that's a fun stage. I really do like the radio play stage because it's the first time I'm hearing the episode come to life in a way. I can listen to it and like see it in my head, and I'm like, yeah, that's going to be a cool episode. And then we give it to the board team. They make it a cool episode because they do this brilliant board. And then that's when it gets locked. Like, that's when we're like, okay, this is what the episode is. This is how long it is. And this is what it looks like.
That's just a white sheet with the black outline of the characters. And
yeah,
motion.
it's every artist has a different style, but it's like rough sketches and like block ins of the movements and stuff. But it's usually very clear. Like, you can watch. It's like a watchable episode. Only it's just not moving and the lip sync. It's not there. But then you transfer that to animation. The animators bring it to life, and then the cleanup team does the clean, like the lines and the color are their own stage. So they go back over the animation with the like line art and the color, and then it goes to compositing, which is like the shading and the glows and like all that stuff. And then meanwhile, the background team is making everything, and so that all goes in. It's so intricate of a process, but I love it. I love seeing it all, because then when it comes together, every department gets to go, wow, like I hadn't seen it with the backgrounds in it, and I hadn't seen it with like the color in it, like because it makes it look so different, like from the black and white rough, so.
What's the frame rate of a show like this?
This one is, we make HELLUVA at 24. HAZBIN is a different frame rate. I think the TV show frame rate is different. I think it's like the 23.976, I think is what it is. So maybe we'll switch over just so that they both match. But right now we just use 24 because that's a pretty standard animation frame
If it
rate.
was 60, would it take twice as long?
It would take twice as long. We're never messing with 60.
So no one does that in the industry, really?
Not for animation, unless you like hate yourself. Yeah, I think 60 is like, we call that, well, and so, okay, a little animation thing. We animate on twos, which means two drawings for every 24, so 24 frames is a second. So we would do one drawing per every 2 frames. So it'd only be 12 drawings. Ones is when you do 24 drawings. It's a different drawing every single frame. That's insane. So to me, 60 is like kind of the equivalent of ones. Like, it's just like, why would you do that to yourself? Because for twos, that would still be the 30 drawings, which is insane. Like,
right.
I'm just like, oh, that's horrifying to me.
I feel like I know what a director does on a live action. What exactly is a director for an animated show?
I think it's similar. I mean, I obviously don't do live action, but from what I've seen of it, it's very similar. Obviously, you're just working with a different medium. Like, because when you have a physical set and actors, you have to like, you can move around it and like point to and like kind of everything. With animation, it's different because it's all drawings. So you have to, like, for me, when I see something different, I usually have to like thumbnail it or like get into a call or like act it out or like something.
Oh, to tell them how you want it to be?
Exactly, yeah, to change it. Usually, though, I really like trusting my team with just kind of seeing what they come up with. If I see something really clearly, we have like a launch where I'm like, here's the things that, or I tell my lead, like, here's the things I'm really married to. And
who's your lead? Is that your...
Oh, yeah, well, it's different on each show. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about the team on HAZBIN, so just to be safe, I won't.
Is that like your assistant director?
Oh, yeah, yes. It's like the board lead is like their own, I would say, yeah, they really help with the directing of the episode, and they do a lot of the revision and everything, which is really awesome. But it's my job as like the director to really get the final vision out. So I'll talk to them about like what I'm wanting or what I think is strong. And we'll even discuss like, character moments and like what might be a more thematic, because what's cool about animation is because it's a little bit less, it's very limitless. Like, you're not limited to what's on the set or what's in the budget for the effects or, like you can like have a shot almost break the rules to get a better composition. And so we'll talk about that. We're like, what if like, the shot is like angled this way and we see like this specific visual in the background that like adds to the character, the story, or makes the moment scarier or like something like that. And in animation, because every single part of it has to be designed and thought through and everything, you can do more of those things that are really intentional and stylistic to like add to the scene.
In live action, a fight scene or explosions are normally the most expensive part of it. Is there something really expensive for an animated show sequence?
Oh yeah. I would say there's certain things in animation that are really hard to do. Usually things like anything to do with like a 3D camera move, because that requires making a 3D set and like a camera, or like cars are really hard because they're such a like inorganic like such a like stiff thing, and so if you're drawing it at angles, it's really hard. Like it's easier to draw a much more, you know, natural character that can move more like fluidly, but a car or like something like it, like vehicles, are really hard.
So that costs more because it's more timely?
Exactly. Yeah, you have to like invest in either getting like a model made or like, you know, and then texturing on that model and just all these things. And then also just complicated shots. Like every so often we do what's called like money shots, where it's like a shot we try to like pay more for, or like give the animator more time, because it's just an intense, like, in my shows, it's usually a camera pan around a character, because then it has to be very smooth and very like usually very slow, and it looks beautiful. It's like Disney, but you know, Disney movies are fluid and you know, on more like ones and are like really complicated for a reason, and it just takes more time. So things like that are usually, so when you see like a shot in an animated show or a movie that just looks, you're like, whoa, how'd they do? That's probably what they considered a money shot. You know, it's just a really complicated shot.
When you watch HAZBIN back, in the past, I've heard you mention that maybe there's something that was a mistake or you wanted that taken out or something. What exactly does that look like? Because I feel like people draw it in. So it's not like the boom mic pops in or someone leaves something in the background of the set. What is a mistake for you in an animated show?
There's so many, because there's so many stages. Some of them can come in the animation, some of them can come in the cleanup, some of them can come in the comp. Like there's so many, like for example, like, you know, just as an example of like a mistake could be, you know, in the comp stage we have like everything in, but one of the characters' eye layer gets like turned off for a set, like, or it doesn't turn off, but like there's just there was maybe a glitch in the export, and so for like one frame the character's eyes just disappear, you know, and it's like, what, wait. And sometimes, and that's why we do these big reviews at the end of when like everything's done, and we kind of like watch it through and try to spot those things. We're like, because some of them are really hard to see because there's just so many stages. So we're like, and some of them are as simple as, oh, Blitz's horns are colored wrong in that shot. Oh crap, like they're like the opposite or something, you know, like they're opposite stripes. And
this is like endless things that could be mistakes
so
now.
Many, exactly, yeah. So now you also know, and it's one of those things where when people like will watch animated shows and they're like, that's a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, you know how hard it is to go back in and change all those, because that happened with HAZBIN. There was a couple people who were just like pointing out these like really minor, like really dumb things, but they were all things that like we saw it. We were like, yeah, we know, but like, hey, it costs money and effort and time to go back and do those things. So like, thanks.
And then those comments get the thumbs up right to the top.
Like, we were just like, yep, thanks. We totally didn't see that. You know? But you know, for the most part, like it is like that. It's time and money, and sometimes it is just a bandwidth issue because there's hundreds of shots in these episodes, and you know, there's so many stages. So you know, it's one of those things where I always like it's why, like, because I haven't seen as many examples in live action, but I think of like the cup, like someone left like a Starbucks cup on set, and I'm like, it's probably because like they did like 80 takes that day, and like nobody knew, and it was like, oh no, you know, or even in the editing bay, they didn't catch it because it's so small, and they were like, wait, no, you know,
that was in a horror movie, right?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, and it's like it's so like I totally get people memeing on it, I totally get it, but it's one of those things where I'm like, Oh, I know. Like, man, like, we know, like, because there's just so many shots and it's so hard to catch everything because, like, I think people think, like, oh, you're looking at one shot, so, like, whatever. But, like, if you knew, like, the time frame and how much we have to, like, get done, like, we're looking at hundreds of shots. So you can't spend forever looking at each one when it gets to that final stage. Like, you obviously do when you're working on it, but then it leaves and goes to another stage. And then that stage is only looking at the thing they're doing. And then that next stage is only looking. So, you know what I mean? So when they all get put together, sometimes that's where the mistakes happen because it's like the people comping it and making it that final product weren't across every other stage, and we can't expect them to catch every single thing. And so that's why we try to do these group watches with everybody, but that's something that not every production can afford.
And then do you have to weigh out how important it is versus
yes,
the deadline?
Exactly. And then you have to pick and choose because you go, well, in this shot, this character's head disappears for 4 frames. That's probably something we cannot, that's absolutely something we cannot let be in the final episode. So maybe this other scene where the character's like iris isn't there, like, every so often there's like a character, like they have the color around their eye, and maybe there's one shot where it's missing and it's like, well, they're kind of in the background and they're not the focus of the shot. So maybe we can let that one go. We call it CBB. It's could be better, but we're like, okay, it's a CBB. Like, it could be better, but we'll live. Like, it does not make or break the episode. And I think that's also something you have to learn in anime, in any, I think, world, is you can't, it's so impossible to be perfect. So you have to kind of like really learn to like accept that things can still look amazing, and it doesn't, like, what will hurt it, like what will be like detrimental to the story and to the characters and to everything versus what's just kind of a normal little mistake that's
glitch.
Not, yeah, exactly. So
is there any kind of alleviation on HAZBIN because there isn't a comment section for things like that versus HELLUVA where people can point things out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess like the comments are kind of all over social media, so we kind of see it for both shows like equally. Maybe because I tend to not read YouTube comments, but it's probably full of them there. But yeah, like I think like people just like to talk about animation, and to be fair, like our shows are so, what's really exciting about them is people like dissect them.
Yeah, they
so
do.
People will catch things that like sometimes I'm even like, wait, that was in the show. There's some things that like there's like these really cute Easter eggs that sometimes like half the crew will understand and they'll go, I get that reference, and then I won't, and so then Twitter will go, oh my God, they made this reference. And I went, wait, that's what that was? Like, I didn't know that was a reference to something. And those are always kind of fun because I know that's because like my crew was like putting in something that's like funny that they knew about and I don't even know. So sometimes Twitter like teaches me things that are in my own show. Like I'm like, oh, that was there. Yeah. And it's always like, because again, every department is like adding these amazing things and making it better.
How big is the team for HAZBIN and how big is the team for HELLUVA?
They're pretty different. HAZBIN is kind of hard to quantify because it's across like a number of studios. But with my studio, oh my gosh, I'm probably not the best person to know at this point, just because it's what's incredible about creating a studio also is that it grows and you kind of like your leadership gets to the point where they don't need you I don't want to say that, but like, like they don't need you to be as hands-on as you were. And so
you don't
for
have
me,
to babysit.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm so thrilled that like I have an incredible head of production, Tom Murray, and I have incredible leads, and I just have the whole studio is so like skilled, and like I really don't have to babysit it at all anymore. And because of that, I don't know the full number yet because we've just brought in a bunch of people, but I know we're definitely over 100 people. I would say maybe getting close to like 200 people. It's a lot of people to make the show because we just so many departments and so much going into it. But it's awesome. Like, it's so cool.
Where were you 5 years ago? Did you ever think that it would get to this point?
Oh, I did not. I was like, I dreamed it would, because I was like, I love these shows. I love these characters. I want to tell the story in full. I really, really want to get it out there, especially Hazbin's story, meant a lot to me. And it was really scary to be putting it out there in like the studio world because, you know, there's so much uncertainty. But I was like, well, I'm not in a position to finance this myself without a massive like Kickstarter or something. And here's a studio willing to make it without that and get behind it. And
the best studio.
Yeah. And it was really incredible that A24 had so much faith in it. And then, you know, then Amazon had so much faith in it as well and greenlight the second season. And so that's an incredible feeling to be like, wait, I always dreamed of having this as an animated show. And not only is that real now, but like I might get to tell the whole story. And that's insane to me. And it's just the support behind it has grown. And I'm just so like, it's the best feeling in the world to have two stories that mean so much to me, feel so realistic to be told as an animated show, which is really hard to do. And I'm also like, I always, as a kid, I mean, even the name Spindlehorse of my studio was like the fake studio name or the fake publishing house when I was making my little comics as a kid. And I was like, Spindlehorse is the name of my, my studio, and it never existed. And now it's real. And I'm like, it's the coolest thing in the world. Like, I'm so honored and fortunate that these shows have like resonated with the audience. And I'm also so honored that, you know, I have so much talent at my studio and I can say I have a studio. Like, it's the coolest thing. I'm on cloud nine kind of constantly. And then the creative world feels, it feels so like expansive because I have other ideas. I have other concepts. I even have other concepts in this universe, even potentially, and we'll come
back to that.
Yeah, and exactly, and it's like, it's just so cool to think that they could possibly happen. Like it's like the best feeling for me as somebody who, as a kid, just all I wanted to do was tell stories and make characters, and I love seeing how much these characters. Because they've mattered to me my whole life. Like I always would daydream constantly about them. I would, make up these music videos in my head when I'd listen to music. And I would always be like listening to a Broadway soundtrack and being like hearing someone's voice and being like, I would love for them to voice this character. And then like to have that be real for some of the actors that we have, it's like the coolest thing in the world. So,
do you have an idea for how many seasons HAZBIN will be?
I mean, I have no idea how many it will be.
Well, in your head, for how long?
Yes. Yeah, roughly. I mean, obviously it depends. Obviously, it always depends on like how many episodes, how long, whatever. I know I said at some point, like in a past interview, I was like, I have no idea, but like it could keep going. And I don't mean that in like the HAZBIN story. I just mean there's so many characters in this world. And I'm like, there could be more stories and more seasons for all I know, because like there's so much like in this universe and it can keep going, and each character feels like a fun character to follow. So that's more what I meant. I was like, not that I want it to go 85 seasons. I really don't want to be The Simpsons with this show. I feel like that would be a lot. But like it feels like a world we could live in for a while. But to me, I think I consider myself like a creative shark. Like I have to keep moving. And to me, that means like moving to a different, like let's follow a different character or let's follow a different part of this world. And that to me is like the best way to keep a project going, is like, we followed this character enough. Like there's enough seasons of this. Maybe let's follow this other character, or like what's happening. Who's the waiter, from that one episode, what's his life like? It's like, to me, that's like a more interesting concept than just continuing forever.
What was your first big milestone, and what's the most recent milestone that you had with HAZBIN?
First big milestone for HAZBIN was, oh man, there's been so many. The first big milestone, I mean, obviously, was just, I think, getting it greenlit. Like I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be like real.
Not the pilot. Having the season be greenlit.
Oh wait, sorry. Ask the question again. Sorry.
For you, as like, this is your baby.
Yeah.
Like, what's that first moment that you really remember as being, this is the coolest thing. I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah. Well, there were so many. For me, though, definitely the biggest and the one that I will cherish the most, just because it was like, oh, yeah, this is real, is that obviously there were so many. There was the green light. There was there was the creating it, there was all these things, there was the rap party, but we finished the show and then it didn't release for a bit. And the real, like, oh my God, I made it, this is real, was we had a premiere in New York City. And it was not only a screening with a bunch of the cast, but it was also, there was an after party where some of the cast performed the songs live. And there was something about being in my favorite city, being with all these Broadway actors who, like, I only dreamed of working with at one point. And also that was the first time we were in person because we recorded everybody during the pandemic. So it was like the first time meeting a lot of them, and they're all together for my show that I like came up with in my like grandma's house, like, or, you know, well, through college, and like really started the pilot in like my grandma's house before I moved out to LA. And it was like this moment of like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, it's coming out. People are seeing it. These people like are okay being associated with it, and like, and are singing the songs in like for real. It was the coolest experience. Like that whole night will forever be like a core memory for me. Like, it was the best thing ever. And then the most recent one, I feel like there was something that just happened that I was, the most recent one, even though this might not be I feel like there's always a new one. Like, every single new thing that happens, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. I think the most recent one though was once the show came out, we got a Times Square billboard, which has always been my like bucket list, like my dream, like child dream, is like to have like a show of mine or a project of mine in Times Square, which, you know, again, New York is like my favorite place. So that was surreal to me. And it was massive. It was like the biggest thing. And it was funny, actually. There's a funny story with the billboard. I saw some people being like, every time you see it, you act like you're seeing it for the first time. And I'm like, yeah, because it would rotate only every 20 minutes. And it was so cold that weekend. And so we were like freezing with our phones like ready, but like our fingers like dying because we kept waiting because it was on rotation and we couldn't quite predict it. Like, it wasn't like a recognizable pattern. So it wasn't like we know, the Abercrombie and Fitch ad, that one happens right before it. It was like we would see the Prime logo and it could either be us or it could be a different like musician post. So we would see the Prime logo and go, okay. And then it would be something else and we were like, no. And so when it was HAZBIN, it was like, oh my God, it's there. And, you know, it was like every time because we literally like didn't know when it would come. So that was funny because we had to wait. We had to spend a lot of time in Times Square to get as many like videos and stuff because I wanted like as much. I was like, this may never happen again. I need to like have as much record of this as possible. But yeah, that was so cool. Like, I was like, this is like so real.
I think that's the coolest thing about you is how much you appreciate all the stuff happening. And when we spend time together at Level Up, seeing you take photos of all the cosplays was so cool to see how invested you are. And it really, like, it gave me chills in that moment. And I'm getting it again now. It was so cool to see how much you love, like, what you created. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it never gets old. Like, that's the one thing I will say, never gets old. That's why I love doing cons, because even though it's kind of hard to do them with my schedule, but like I love doing them because I love seeing the fans. And it's always different. There's always like a memory. There's always like an experience that I'm like, oh my God. Like, that's why I do that, because I love it. I'm obsessed with like how much creativity there is in the fandom, and also just I love being around the cast. I love seeing them see how much like creativity is in the fandom. I love seeing them see this world, and I love seeing them appreciate these characters. and appreciate the people appreciating these characters. And so I've hearkened myself to like a soccer mom, because I'm constantly like the one with the cat with the phone in everyone's face, and I feel bad about it. And sometimes I'm like, oh God, I hope they don't think I'm like cringe. But like, I mean, it is a little cringe, but like, it's one of those things where it's just authentically like I want to capture these moments. So I try, like, I'll see like a really amazing cosplayer about to go up to like one of the actors who plays the character, and I'm like, I gotta get this. Like it's like to me it's like a memory. It's like a moment, and I love seeing this cast like meet for the first time and like be on panels for the first time, and all these things like are so cool. Like I love seeing those moments, and I constantly like it never gets old. So I love that.
Don't be humble. You run 2 massive animated shows. How busy is your schedule?
Oh, it's nightmarish. It is really, really insane. My recommendation to anybody who wants to make shows, make one. Just stick with the one. I mean, I will say, I mean, I love it. I eat, sleep, and breathe these shows. Like I said earlier, what's nice about them is that they're so different, but they're the same world. So it's the same like tone and everything. I don't have to like switch my brain too far to switch from one to the other. But the content of each show is so different that I'm getting something out of one that I'm not getting out of the other. So it's very fun to ping pong back and forth between them creatively. But production is just hard, like no matter what you're working on. And it's hard enough on one show, but it's really hard on 2 shows that are running simultaneously and are at different stages of, production and everything. So it's definitely, it's complicated, and I don't have much of a social life at this point. I even tweeted about it. I was like, I have a list of people that I just want to get like lunch with or like drinks with. And I've had this list since before the year started, and we're 6 months in, and I haven't had time to get lunch with any of these people. And I'm like, and so like the only events I can do are like these kind of ones that like come up, or they're like big enough, or like they're like, it's like a party or like whatever. And I'm like, I can do that. Like if I get all my meetings done in time, I can do that one. Or like, oh, I'm not in France yet, so I can do that one. Or I'm not going on, I love being busy, but I will say it's a little intense. So part of me is like, I need to learn the balance, and I think it's healthy to have a balance. But I also, I love trying to, do as much as I can for both shows.
Do you ever interact with other show creators, animated show creators?
I met some other creators for the first time at this con called MomoCon. I was on a panel with Matt Brawley and Dana Terrace, and like it was so cool because they're both like, they created Disney shows. And
which ones?
Amphibia and The Owl House are their shows, and they're fantastic shows. And my thing is, it's so different. Like I was like hearing them talk about it, I was like, whoa, that's really different from my experience, because again, HAZBIN was kind of like indie made with A24 at first, so there wasn't a lot of restriction, but there was a lot of like learning curve of like production, because I'd never worked like that before. But like obviously Disney has like its whole like other like, and they've been making shows forever, so they have their own like kind of processes and things. So it was so interesting to hear them talk about that, and it was awesome to meet them. And I know a couple other showrunners, like Jenny Jaffe and like Maxwell Adams is somebody that he was one of the first animated show creators I ever met, and it was a huge one for me because he created like one of my favorite shows as a kid, which was The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and I love him. He's like one of the sweetest people ever, and that's important. Like I'm very thankful that he was one of the first people I met out here in LA. I met him before I moved, and every time I would visit, I would like get lunch with him, and he's just so sweet. And I think that is important. Like when you meet people who were a huge influence on you and like are in this industry, it's so nice to like get like the kind ones, like as your first experiences to the industry. And he's actually how I connected with Richard, because Richard starred in that show back when it was on TV. And then and Richard's been one of the best people I've ever ever worked with ever. He's the voice director for both shows and voices Moxie. And he's just the funniest, like kindest person ever.
When you first met him, did you know you wanted to bring him into the world?
So what's funny is that I didn't meet him until he was cast. So it was one of those things where I asked Maxwell Adams, I was like, do you have his like agent's contact or whoever? I would love to cast him in something. And he gave me that information. And then when it came time to make the Helluva pilot, I was like, I really, really want to work with Richard Horvitz. Maybe he'll do this show. I kind of catered the character for him a little bit in the sense that I was like, well, I want him to voice this character already, but what are things that he likes that he hasn't gotten to explore? Because that's also something I love to do with casts is I look at what they've done, and sometimes it's like, well, they really fit this one thing, but I really like kind of giving them something different.
In terms of what?
Just if it feels like they've been cast as a certain type of character a lot, I go, well, what's like a different kind of character, that might be that even if it's like similar or whatever, or plays to like a strength of an actor, there's something that they can dig into that isn't a carbon copy of another character they've played. So for Richard, I was like, he plays a lot of these very like expressive and loud and really like iconic like characters like Zim and Billy and like Daggett. And I was like, what's a different kind of character that might be fun for him to play? And I learned that he likes musical theater because, he's sung in a couple of those other shows, but never really had a character that like sings a lot or like likes musicals. And so I was like, I'm going to make that part of his character. And I didn't even realize how much of a musical theater fan Richard is. So I kind of like, I think he's mentioned before that that's like part of what sold him on the project. Because for me, I was also like, this is super adult, and I don't know if he's ever done adult stuff. And I don't remember who was like, I don't think he's gonna do it. I don't think he like
because it was adult.
Because it was adult, and I was like, well, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna see if he'll do it. If he says no, it's fine. And he did it, and it was. But I really loved getting to give him this opportunity to sing more and to play this character who is kind of a musical theater nerd, and kind of let him put that into the character. So yeah, I love that worked out. It was such a like fun like way of getting to like work with an actor I've always wanted to work with, Are there any mannerisms in Blitz that you brought out for Brandon? What's funny? There was a big one, because as I was getting to know Brandon through making, because I tell this story all the time that Brandon was such a specific, like Helluva in so many ways, like really was so bolstered by meeting Brandon, because I knew I wanted him a part of it. And so I met with him. I reached out to his manager, and like she set him a meeting with us, and I met him at a Starbucks, and we were just like talking, and I pitched him the show. And he was like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, I'm free on Sundays and like or I'm free like this time, like this parts of the week, not really this time. And I was like, wait, like you're down to do this? And he was like, yeah. And most generals you have, like, it's like, yeah, we'd love to work with you. And then nothing happens. And so I was so used to that. And so it was so game changing that he took it seriously, because then I was like, oh no, let's do this. And it was like perfect timing and everything. But when it comes to mannerisms, as we were working together at first, we did this live stream together, and I forget what it was for, but we did this live stream. And he went to the fridge and pulled out cheese and put sriracha on it, like hot sauce on it, and just ate it straight up. And it was never comment, but all the comments and like everyone was like, the fuck did he just do? Like, did he just eat cheese with like hot sauce on it? And so in like season 1, there's an episode where Blitz just does, like, he just eats cheese with hot sauce, and we put that as much in the show as we can. Like, we try little things like that, like we'll try to put into the show, because it's so funny. But that one specifically, I was like, no, I have to put that in the show. It's so specific.
Did he ever notice it?
Oh yeah, no, he knows all about it now. So now, like, we're like, yeah, I think he did it on like another, like I think he's done like a bunch of live streams and stuff where he's like joked about it. And then there are mannerisms in Blitz that came from other members of the team, like the horse love came from, and I guess I'll tell the story finally so everyone knows where this came from, and it's embarrassing to me only. So so my friend Sam is a horse girl, and she is the art director for the show. So she does a ton of work on it. And there was just one day where I don't know if I was like high or tired or like what, but I was watching Spirit, like the movie Spirit, and I was watching it. And I remember just like kind of being like, and then I wrote to say, I think we were on a call or like somewhere, and maybe it was in text. I can't remember if it was text or a call, but either way, it was very, I just went, you know, Blitz would like this movie. Blitz would relate to this movie. And she went, excuse me? What? Blitz would relate to Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron? Excuse me? But because I moved on. I was like, also like, you know, what are you doing later? And she was like, no, you can't move on from that. What the fuck you were talking about? And I was like, I don't know. I just think, I don't know. It's like about a horse like breaking free, and he's trying to break this. He's trying to break out of the system too. It's like sticking it to the man. Like she was like, this is the dumbest thing you've ever said. And that means, and so we basically, because of this conversation, we decided Blitz would be a horse girl. And so Blitz is obsessed with horses. And then it's funny because Brandon hates horses. So he's like, cool, thanks. Everyone gives me horses at conventions.
Oh,
now.
That's so funny.
So I did that because Sam is a horse girl, it just became a bigger joke. And I was like, no, he's going to be a horse girl now. So it became a joke from me saying something stupid. And then it turned into like, well, you like horses, right? I'm going to make him a horse girl just to bug you.
That's amazing.
So it was like the dumbest thing. But I love it because now it's like a part of his character, and we like have made it like have more narrative weight, and like we draw horses into like every background of his house, and it's great.
Do you add things like that for the following seasons when you hang out with the cast of HAZBIN more?
Oh yeah, I don't even know if the cast knows how much stuff we just put in because they've either said or done or like something, like because you know they do so many interviews, or like I hang out with them and like we get to kind of get to know them, and they'll say something really like unhinged, and we'll be like, oh, that's going in the show, you know, and usually it's something really subtle. There was one actually, and I'm going to tell this story because I know Amir now much better, and I feel less embarrassed telling this story. But one of the first times I met Amir, it was, we were still recording the show actually. And, the first time I ever met him in person was he had a show at, I'm blanking on the name. I think it was the Bourbon Room in LA, and it was this awesome like cabaret show about his life, and it was like such a cute concept. And he was performing, and they had like a drink, like you had to get a certain number of drinks, and I default to the strongest drinks because I'm an idiot. I love Long Island's. They're just the best tasting drink.
Oh, you go right for it.
Exactly, yeah. That's actually how when I met Georgie for the first time, Georgie was like, "What do you drink?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing too much. Just I'll get a Long Island." And she's like, "Oh,
you're here for a good time."
I'm like, I just think they taste the best. So yeah, I go for the hardest drink. But with the show, so I had a couple of drinks. So I would say like, I wasn't like drunk, but I was definitely like a little messy, I guess. Like I was just very, and when I get drunk, I get happy. So I think I was a little like extra bubbly. And you know, we're saying hi to him after the show, and and I'm like, oh my god, it was so good. Like I love, you know, I think a little like extra peppy compared to how I probably was in the recording sessions. And he was like, oh, you're a little sloppy, and I was like devastated. I was like, yeah. And so in the show, Alistair calls Adam sloppy, and that's why. I was like, I'm going to write this into the show. I love that he said that. So I'm going to have him say that to another character in character. So yeah, thanks Amir for calling me sloppy.
Did he ever say anything to you about it with that line?
Oh no, I don't think he again, he didn't know.
So funny.
So now he'll know. But like things like that, it's like you never, you know, just sometimes sometimes, and I love it. Like that was like a funny, like I loved that. And so I was like, now because it wasn't even like deliberate. It was more just like, I was trying to think of something for him to say. And I was like, no, I know exactly what he's going to say.
Yeah.
Because it almost felt like an Alistair moment. I was like, that's something Alistair would say. But yeah, I love the cast for that. Like sometimes there's just these amazing moments with them that, and also just like the improv they do in the booth is usually from like us knowing them and being like, you know, what kind of jokes, like, you know, it's awesome. Like I love this cast so much, and I love that I'm like getting to know them more and can call them friends. And it's like it's the coolest thing. It's such a family feeling show, like in the way of like the cast, like especially since so many of them also know each other and have worked with each other, and they're so close. It's so cool, like seeing how much camaraderie I guess there is.
When the Has-Been cast gets their lines, are they getting the full episode or just their...
Yeah, they get the whole episode.
Oh, so they can read the whole thing, see how it plays out. Oh, cool.
Yeah, and most do. Most of them are like, this episode's like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, like, oh, you read it. Cool. You know, like, because I would respect if they only read their part, you know.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's so cool.
Have you scouted anybody for the second season for guest spots?
So the second season is fully recorded, I think. Yes. So, which is awesome. But yeah, obviously I can't say who, but there are some really fun new cast members, and some really fun cameos. And I can't wait for people to see them, because obviously like there aren't too many new characters being like introduced, but because the cast is so huge already. But I feel like every season will potentially bring like a couple new cool people, and it's really fun to like find who that is each time. So yeah, I can't wait for everyone to like meet the new actors and the new characters.
From the showrunner perspective, do you now only focus on season 2 and wait for season 3 to get picked up again, and then you start writing the script for it?
Yeah, like we would there would be a point, I imagine, where like Amazon in Has-Bin's case would go, okay, we're making more, so here's when the writing room will start, or XYZ. And obviously like that's just a process that is, you know, like new. So, you know, everything takes time. But again, I'm really hopeful and I'm really excited. So I can't wait to see like what happens. But yeah, like it'll be like right now my focus is season 2. So, you know, it'll happen when it happens.
I have 10 fan questions.
Sweet.
Will we get to see Stella's background, or will she just remain the villain?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so you know what's fun about Stella? Short answer, yes. We do get into her backstory. Whether or not it's soon, I definitely can't say, but we do. Because I think her position is really interesting. And what I like about Stella is she is a villain, and she's a pretty bad person, but she does have a perspective. And you know what's funny? Most people have kind of seen it, you know, where, you know, she was also in this arranged marriage and she didn't ask for it either. And I think that that's a valid, you know, perspective. So yes, we do explore it, and I'm really excited for that, because I do think it's a plot point, and the whole Goetic family to me is such a, like, we haven't gotten too into it yet. We've only seen it from Stolas's perspective, and there's a whole nother side. Like there's her side, there's Indrilphus, there's the kings, there's other characters. We meet, he's already been revealed, so it's not a spoiler. We meet a new Goetic character named Visago, and a bunch of other characters. And I'm really excited as we get further in the show, that side of the Hellborn like world is going to be explored, because it's really been interesting to like figure out. And that is part of it, is like her character and her position in this Goetic society, and you know why it matters so much to her. So yes, I personally always want to explore the characters, even if they are kind of, because she is like one note, but even then it's like most one note people have kind of are that way because of something. And I hearken it a lot to BoJack Horseman, because that's my favorite series of all time. And his mother is a character that's very similar. She's incredibly one note. She's just full on, just like the most cartoonishly abusive mother ever. But there's an episode where they focus entirely on her backstory because she has dementia, and it's about her going, like, her brain, like, during that. And we see the backstory told through this, like, really stylized, like, almost dementia mind. And it's so funny because everyone was like, whoa, that just... wait a minute, she went through, and I was like, yeah, but like they did that in season 4, like the end of season 4. So for me, like, you know, it felt normal to kind of be like, we'll get to it, but that's like part of it, is that it's not about her. It's more about Stolas's perspective. But I am really excited to get into the perspectives of other characters, because that's, firstly, I don't want to end the show before we explore almost every major character. And to me, villains are some of the most interesting characters. It's like, but at the same time, she's really fun in the way of her being so specifically one note, because to me, I also love characters like Cruella de Vil, who are just like, you don't know why she wants to kill dogs, but she definitely wants to kill dogs because she wants to look good. And it's like, that's as deep as she gets, you know, and that's still fun and memorable. And so to me, right now, Stella is that, because we just love how much fun we can have with how bratty she is, and her in tandem with Andrilphus, who we'll see more of as the show goes on. It's just, they're just a very fun villainous duo. But yeah, I'm very long-winded with my answers, but yes, we will explore Stella's backstory eventually.
Do you have a process for when it's time, or is it just whenever it feels right to you?
Well, again, it's in this like kind of block out process that we did. So what we did, and it always shifts around, because sometimes as we're writing, we realize, oh, this episode actually should probably come before this one. But we do, for the most part, for the rest of Helluva, it's mapped out, because I know how many episodes. I wanted the show to be 50 episodes total. So that means that seasons 3 and 4 are very long. So they're going to take longer to make, and they're going to be really complicated, but they're like really solid story arcs. And because of that, because I wanted this like a set amount of episodes, all of them are basically mapped out. Like all of season 3, even though we haven't written the second half, are all planned out. We
like
just
the plot lines.
Yes, like the outlines are done. And so we have that for the whole show. And so, but that helps because we get to go, oh, this is the episode where the Stella storyline will be in. But then as we're writing, we might go, actually, it might be more impactful if we know her storyline in this episode, because then this episode hits harder, or you know what I mean? So we move things around like that, like these kind of beats or these storylines. But for the most part, the episodes are kind of locked in. So we go like, okay, this is when this happens, so this other event has to happen before that, and, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, we have it planned out, like ahead, because we want the story to flow as well as we can make it, you know, or at least or as based on our judgment, you know.
You're such a wizard. You really are.
Thank you.
About your curating skills, how do you recruit all these amazing people? Is there anyone memorable that sticks out?
Well, we have so many rock stars. I never want to like point people out, because I also am like, but everyone else is doing such a good job too. But you know, I mean, I guess though what I will do is I'd love to highlight some of the people who I just feel like have gone so like above and beyond, and are just so passionate. And right now I'm really vibing really hard with, we have a board artist named Samantha Ames, who just is such a trooper. We gave her some of the hardest songs on HAZBIN season 2, and she made some of the coolest visuals for them that I've ever seen. Like I was like, oh my God, like what? Like, oh my, how we're gonna, but yes, like, yeah, like, and she also did Just Look My Way, the music video. She boarded the entire thing, and that music video is so beautiful. And I really love the versatility that she has, and how like just passionate she is about the character, how much she nails their kind of personalities and everything, and sets this amazing groundwork for then the amazing animators to come in and bring it to life. And so shout out to her. There's so many people though, like, you know, I could list 100, like, again, that's the only reason I'm saying that person is because just like as of this second, I've just been blown away, and I'm so thankful of how hard she worked on like a very difficult assignment. So, you know, thank you, Ames. But like, yeah, we have so many like incredible animators, and so many the cleanup team also like is just, it's a hard job. It's usually the most thankless position. And I really appreciate how much passion's put into that. And like just that whole team, like shout out to that whole team and Sammy and everyone running it. Like, it's just like, it's so much work to make these animated shows. So it's like everyone is a rock star on these shows, but and I also like my leadership team, like they take so much on and they have so much responsibility on them to like make everything work, but they're all like incredible at it, and I have so much trust in them. So yeah, and the other part of the question was how we like bring people in. I mean, nowadays that's more my leadership team. I trust that every department has an incredible lead, and they're the ones that look at the reels and determine who's going to be like joining or who we might test.
And then do you give your final say, or are they...
Nowadays I trust them to kind of do that, because again, I'm just so, if things had to wait on me, we'd actually like probably have many more like what we call bottlenecks, which is just like slowdowns that happen because like there's a dam, you know, like they're just, if we have to wait for Viv, like her schedule's a nightmare, and oh my god, and this has to move. So I'm trusting my team more at Spindlehorse to just kind of make approvals without me, and I really appreciate that. And so there's so many new people that I'm like, whoa, this person's so good, and they're like, yeah, this is a new animator, and I'm like, oh, that they're great, you know. So it's like it's awesome. Like, it's very rewarding. Like, in a way, I'm sad that I don't personally like curate it as much as I used to, but it's part of growth, you know.
Did young Viv always focus on having a solid team like that?
I mean, honestly, as a kid, and even in the early days of the making my projects, my dream was always to work with friends. Like, I was like, I just want to work with my friends. Working with friends is sometimes not the best idea, because especially when you're like the boss of a show and then you're working with your friends, sometimes there's just, you know, conflict of interest, and you're like, I don't want to give this person a note because they're like my best friend, or what, you know what I mean? And what's amazing now is I feel like you can kind of have that. So my recommendation is always, if you want to work with your friend, make sure you guys have a really good relationship, because it might be tested. What I found was working with people who became my friends. And I think that's a little healthier, because everyone kind of understands their role still, but there's a camaraderie that's created, and you really like bond through the process, and then you meet as people and you go, actually, you're like the coolest person ever. And so my best friends that I have now, I met through my production, and we actually were all in different stages of it. Like, I was the head of it, and Sam was my background lead, and then Sky was an animator, and then we like connected so strong, and our drive and our passion all matched each other, and then they became like, Sam and Sky are like inseparable, so like we just connected as like this unit, and we've been like really inseparable ever since, and they're now my art director and my animation director respectively, and it's so nice. So like I don't say like don't work with your friends. It's just like when you have friendships, like pre-existing relationships, and then you go, let's make a thing together, it's like having like a child or a pet. It's like, then there's all these things of like, who does what, and oh, you made a mistake, but I can't blame, you know what I mean? Like, there's, I don't know, maybe that's a bad analogy, but like, just, it gets complicated, because sometimes you have to like come down on someone, or you have to like, you know, it's production is stressful. So yeah, I think it's best to like meet people and have everyone understand what their roles are versus just being like, let's work with each other and make something. But it also can be really fun. So I guess, it's depends. But I feel like I learned a lot of lessons with that.
So with them being your inner circle and your friends outside, is your downtime still involved with the show and animation?
Yeah, I will say there's probably a lot more like work talk out of work that
it's fun.
It's fun. Like it's always fun, but sometimes I'm like, maybe like we all like need to like we all like collectively are like workaholics, so we're like constantly talking about work, and part of me is like, maybe we need to get better about that. Just because there's so much else going on, and but that's what's nice is that like there is so much more other like we like, especially with me and Sky, like me, Sky, and Sam, we do have interests shared outside of work, so it's like really nice. And obviously like other people I've met on the show who I'm really close with, like Brandon and Adam and Lyle and Monica, and there's so many other people, but like people I work with very closely a lot. We have so much, like I've known, so Lyle and Monica are respectively a new writer for season 3 is Lyle, and Monica has been a voice actress for me forever. She was in the original HAZBIN pilot, and she does a lot of incidental characters on Helluva, and she works prod at my studio. So she's like been with me forever, but I've known her since like 2013, or earlier. She's one of the people I've known like the longest, and she's like one of the funniest, most like kind people I've ever known. So like, I retract it. Work with your friends. Just work with your good friends, not your shitty friends. That's my advice, actually.
Is it possible to get all 7 sins talk in the same room?
I want to really bad. Like my dream is to cross them over. So yeah, because the only one missing. Yeah, the only one's missing. So short answer, yes, because in Helluva we see 6 of them, but the missing one is Lucifer, and I would kill to have Lucifer in there with them too. But obviously because Lucifer is in HAZBIN, it's like a little tricky, but fingers crossed that we'll be able to do that eventually, because that's my dream. Like I want all 7 of them together really bad. But we do see 6 of them very well. I don't know when this is coming out, but potentially soon. So I'm very excited for that.
Is there a story behind the signature black choker for all / most of the female characters?
Honestly, no, just because I it's so interesting. I have some weird design quirks that are very me oriented. I don't know why. I really like giving a lot of my characters some kind of neck accessory, and I didn't even realize this until people started like pointing it out and like joking about it. A lot of my characters have bow ties or chokers or necklaces or something.
You subconsciously just did all.
Yeah, and for me it's honestly because one, it actually serves a cleanup purpose. Sometimes it's nice to have a separator because they're black, it helps. You can like cut it off, and then you can do edits to the body and not worry about the head. It's kind of like a cutoff point, which is kind of nice for animation purposes. But in reality, it's honestly just when I make a design, sometimes when I look at them, I'm just like, I don't know, something's missing. And then this one little black line, and I go, all right, they look better now. I don't know why. It's just this weird quirk of mine. And the same thing with bow ties. I'm like, I'll design a character, and I'm like, they look okay. But as soon as they have the bow tie on, I'm like, oh, they're cute. I like that. That's perfect. So I don't know. It's just a weird thing of mine. And it's very self-indulgent because it's something I try to avoid with like characters I design for like other projects, because I'm like, it's a me thing. So unless somebody wants something to be very me, I try to avoid that.
Yeah. What do you think happens to a character when their story is told?
That's a good question. I really like things living on with the audience. Like people, I'm sure there's so many like fanfics and fan comics and just just ideas. I like when something kind of becomes like like when you make these projects, they kind of become the worlds. And I like the idea that people can kind of keep them alive in their own heads and their own stories and their own everything, because to me, I feel like there always is more. Like that's why I'm like, oh, all these stories could continue theoretically, because there's always like the next challenge in these characters' lives. But I also really like happy endings, so I like the feeling of like it's over and that's where everyone leaves and nothing bad happens to them ever again, because, you know, in reality probably there is more hardship and everything. But to me, I'm like, when I end a story, I like being like, this is where they are, and if the story continues, it's happy theoretically. But also there's part of me that in my head does think about angsty sad endings to all my characters that aren't in the show. Like, it's like, yeah, what, the show ends like this, but like, oh no, how do they die? Like, how do they die eventually? And I think about that myself, but I don't know if I ever want to tell those stories, because I'm like, I don't know, there's something sad about that too. I'm like, and it's funny because I'm not afraid to kill off characters, but I mean, we already saw it with Adam. I loved Adam, and I wish we had more time with him. So I'm willing to do it if it's better for the story. But I hate it because I love these characters as much as everybody else. And so there is a part of me that hates killing them, because when they're dead in a story, it's like, oh my God, they're gone. Like, I can't, but there is also still so much to explore, like in, a fan, in a head or head canon and everything. So I feel like they can always live on, and there's AUs and there's all these things that people can like create that kind of keep those characters around. But I guess what I'll say to like everyone is that I feel your pain as much as you. I love these characters as much as everyone else. So I don't want them to die, but if it's a better story, they're going to die. And I hate it as much as you guys. I cry as hard as you guys do. So but I'm not afraid to do it, because, I'm like, if this is a better story, but I also, if a character dies, it's not without reason because of that. I'm like, I'm not one of those people that's just going to kill a character because, oh, that's shock. Like, no, it's for a reason. It's either to, like, it has to be for a reason.
Would you find value in killing off a main character in the final episode?
Exactly, yeah. It's like, well, it depends on the story, right? But like, usually that, to me, for like a main character, it has to be a significant event, or like, yeah, you're getting into that final climax ending territory, right? Which is usually where the deaths will happen too. So, but it's one of those things where, yeah, I love media that's challenging. So some of my favorite shows kill characters and are hard to, like, concepts to watch. And I will say, with Helluva though, I will say, it's like, to ease everyone's mind, it's harder to kill characters in the main cast because the show is about their development. It's about their change, and the stakes are a little more about that. It's about their relationships. It's about that. So to kill one off feels like, after years of development and build up, like, because like I will faintly say, like, a lot of people think Stolas is gonna die, and like, I'm like, we would that would ruin the story. Like, the only reason I feel confident saying, like, no, he's not gonna die, at least, not any time soon, is because, like, it would undo the entire show's, like, development. You just go, why'd I watch this for the last, So I think certain stories, it's like, this really does not serve it to kill a character off. But in a show like HAZBIN, where there's there's very different stakes, I feel like it feels more like possible, So again, I'm vaguing around because there might be death in both shows, and I won't tell you who or when or what or how, but it's a possibility. And I feel like people between both shows, we have killed characters before too. So I'm not even speaking about something that hasn't happened yet, but I think people like know that, and that's why they're like, who's gonna die? I'm like, I don't know. Who is gonna die? I don't know.
Is there a timeline for season 2 of HAZBIN?
Yes. Season 2 has already been written and recorded, and we're working on it. Obviously, I can't talk to it too much, but I'm very excited for it, because I don't know, like, I love continuing. I love these characters. I love this cast, and I also think, like, we get to explore things that, because season 1 is done and people like we don't have to reintroduce these characters. It gives more bandwidth to build on them, and that's what's exciting to me about any season 2. Like the same thing happened with Helluva. It's like season 1 was so much setup and also just learning. Like season 1 really was special because I was figuring out what the show would be with Brandon. Like when we first started it's like the growth of the characters has been very like genuine to our growth of like where we want the story to go. Like it started so in line-ish with the pilot in terms of like basic premise. And then as we wrote, like even episode 2, I was like, I really want this episode to be about Stolas and his daughter. And from that, it sparked this like, oh, actually though, that changes the dynamic a lot. And we have to, so starting at episode like 2, we like really zeroed in on this angle. And I remember asking Brandon, so Brandon controlled the fate of the show because really in that first season when we were writing it, I asked him, I was like, do you think that Stolas and Blitz is a worthwhile relationship to explore, or do we want to keep it purely like comedic and I had no idea because that's leaning more into emotional territory and really complex story territory, which I love, but working with Brandon, I didn't know him as well. And I was like, his stuff is so comedy driven that I was like, will he want to do that with the show, or is he going to want to keep it more in line with the straight, like, joke of like, you know, Stolas and Blitz being this like weird hookup relationship? And he was the one that was like, you know, I think that would make sense. Like, I think that would, you know, be interesting. And I went, yes, because I wanted to do that. So I was like, yes. And so that changed the trajectory. I think there was some panel where I was like, yeah, you controlled whether or not Stolas would stay like a villainous character or have this really intricate, nuanced story and this like complicated romance between the main characters. And I'm so glad that he approved of it because I wanted to do it, but I was so like not, you know, I was so unsure of myself, and I was like, well, if he thinks it's a dumb idea, then I'm not gonna want to do it. But then he did, and I was like, yeah, like yes, and I'm so thankful because it is really what to me became the identity of the show, because it's about Blitz's relationships, and this relationship is so weird and complicated, and I was like, I want to explore that, and so we got to, and it was nice, and I also I really like Stolas' character because it's so much more interesting than what it could have been. Like just a straight villain character would have been, I feel like it would have gotten stale after a while and weird, and probably would have gone into a weird direction that I wouldn't have wanted to explore.
Have you ever thought of doing a longer format, like a movie? Like
a movie? Oh yeah, I would love. I mean, to me, all the ideas I have for movies are kind of like way later down the line. Like I wouldn't want to do one now because the stories are so fresh still. So I like, to me, movies are like the finales almost, you know, or like the like grand, like what's like the bigger like story or villain or challenge, right? But my dream like would be like, just because I think it would be like the coolest thing to do in a movie would be like a big like crossover thing with like a huge like
the two worlds,
yeah. It would be the coolest thing. So I'm like, that would be cool as a movie. But I also think both shows like could have movies in their own like, or their own, you know, canon, or, you know, separate basically as well. Like there's so much potential. But yeah, I would love, feature film is like a dream of mine, so I would love to like bring these characters into that. It would be the coolest thing.
Viv, you're honestly killing it.
Thank you. I'm glad. I have so much words, so many words.
No, seriously, thank you so much for your time. I know how valuable it is, and honestly, I watched HAZBIN, incredible. I watched HELLUVA, incredible. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course, thank you.
Guys, go check out Viv's channel. It's going to be linked down below.
Thank you.
Lightweights out. That was so good.
Oh, good. Yay.